equity.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you for attending the Racial Equity and Policing Commission in Salt Lake City, Utah regular meeting, Thursday, March 10th, 2022. This meeting is a discussion among commissioners and select presenters. The public is welcome. Items scheduled may be moved or discussed during different portions of the meeting based on the circumstances or availability of the speakers. This meeting will be, this meeting will be an electronic meeting pursuant to the chair's determination that conducting the meeting at a physical location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety for those who may be present at the anchor location. The commission meeting will not have a physical location, and all attendees will connect remotely. Members of the public may provide public comment by joining through Zoom. And we first have on the agenda the welcome. And then let's see. Then I have open dialogue. Is that right, Moana?
Yes.
Okay. During this portion of the meeting, commissioners may raise topics and discuss current events that may impact or influence the commission's overall work, discussion, or deliberations to provide recommendations to the mayor and city council regarding the Salt Lake City Police Department's policies, budget, and culture. No action will be taken during this section of the meeting. Matters discussed during this section of the meeting may be scheduled on a subsequent agenda for follow-up. So do we have any public? Do I read a public comment, Moana?
If there's anyone who has anything from the commission who would like to in the open dialogue, and then we'll proceed to the public comment. No?
No? Okay. So we will proceed to, should I skip the approval and adopt the minutes for February?
Yes, we'll do that for the next meeting.
Okay. And next step is the Salt Lake Police Department Community Diversity and Inclusion Training Update. Chief Brown and Lieutenant Zayas will briefly update us, the commission on the Salt Lake Police Department Community Diversity and Inclusion Training process. Holy cow, sorry. You know, I have to apologize because I had surgery, as many of you know, and coming down from the drugs and that is just really hard. I just got to tell you. So I apologize.
No problem at all, Vice Chair. Thank you. Commissioners, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you and be with you here. We almost didn't get in, but we made it. A few technical problems. But can you bring up, Moana or Laura, can you bring up the update on the consultant training? Then we'll go through that real quick.
Can you see it? I'm sharing it.
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, commissioners, you know that that you have asked for some inclusion, diversity training within the police department, and we strongly support that recommendation. We have now, as a group, myself, Lieutenant Zayas, Deb Alexander, the HR director, Moana Coletta, talked about different ways that we can bring this training into the department. The one concern, not a concern, but logistically, to do that in an agency of 700 police officers and professional staff, you have to do that training anywhere from 12 to 16 times to get everybody through that class. And then we would also want to have that as part of our curriculum in our new hire classes, the recruit classes that we have as well. So we'll be looking to do that at least 3 more times. So we'll be doing this training about 20 times. So we received a list, I think, of 6 organizations that expressed interest or that could that want to participate or show their wares as far as what they feel they can bring to the table. We reached out to 6 of them, they're going to come back and submit a training proposal by May 27th. And then we hope to grab these organizations, and we're going to have them, we've given them a curriculum. And I think, Moana, do you have the curriculum there? Or I can have Laura pull it up as well.
Yes, I do. Do you want me to share that out as well? I just sent everyone an email.
Everybody should have it. We can kind of go over it just real quick on the overview,
Okay, let me grab it then.
and it'll make probably a little more sense.
Let me just grab it real quick. I'll pull it up.
There we go. That is Yvette designed that, right, Yvette? That looks nice.
I had help from the graphic designer.
Okay. Take the credit. Next page. So that's really just the introduction, commissioners, of the rep, the C-Rep, how it was formed, and the influence that we want, or you want to have within the community and the police department. We talk about how this is going to be something for our basic academies, as well as our patrol, our detectives, and professional staff. And more important, we want to talk about this is not just one and done. This is an initial training, but then we'd like to have it be an ongoing annual training, because the one thing in policing, as we all know, is it always changes. Or the most consistent thing is change, and we'll change with what happens. We'll lead from the front, and we want to be very proactive on the things that we're teaching and we're discussing in these classes. Any questions on that? So
No.
the proposal is to take these 6 organizations, and the curriculum is, scroll down through the curriculum. We'll kind of show you what we're looking at. And this is just a draft. We can definitely take this in different directions, add to, take from it, but you can kind of see the first is law enforcement history, kind of starting at that national level. How law enforcement agencies came to be here in the United States, the origins of policing, the slave patrols, the Japanese encampments, kind of cover those aspects. And then we'll take it from that high level national perspective, and then bring it into, down to the state of Utah, how Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake City Police Department was the first agency in the state. We're 170 years old. We started in 1851. Kind of how our police department was formed. If you ever have a chance to look at some of the initial roles of the police department, there are 40 officers. On March 10th of 1851, we started the police department with 40 officers, and off to the side of every officer's names, except for 2, is a number. That number is the ward in which they belong to. So it's really interesting to see how close the LDS Church was in the starting of this police department. And then we talk about the wage. We made 25 cents an hour, and we certainly pay them more. The growth, the first women in our police department, the first person of color, the motor unit.
I can't hear anything. Can anybody else?
No, I think he may have froze.
Okay.
I thought it was just me as well.
Okay.
I thought I lost my audio.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
And I didn't hear anything either, so it's probably frozen.
Chief, can you hear?
So far, I like it. So far, I like his piece of his curriculum where they're taking it all the way back to slavery with overseers. I think that's important to cover that piece of information and education. And so far, he seems like he's got a lot in his curriculum that needs to be said and put out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, Steve. And in our law enforcement classes and even at the university level, it's more about reviewing the origins of law enforcement in England with Sir Robert Peel and early community policing, kind of ignoring that critical piece about relationships with community, particularly African Americans in the United States, which is a history that I think a lot of folks know, but a lot in law enforcement don't. So don't really have a good appreciation of why it can be challenging to build relationships with the community. So I think that's a critical origin.
Steve,
That
you
was-
always come up with something good, don't you?
I'm sorry if I spoke over anybody else too, by the way.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
yeah, no, you're good. Hey, Lieutenant, I think you did a great job on that presentation also. Thank you.
There's Chief.
So that the cameras.
I'm now at Laura's desk. I don't know what's going on.
Let me do that.
Well,
So-
hey, Laura, how you doing?
Hi.
As you get settled, Chief, we were talking about collectively how much we appreciate your approach. So
I won't let him move it over.
That's
So.
You're cutting out, Steve.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Where did we get to? Yvette, did you fill in the rest?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I thought we were frozen. You stopped at it about the now. You got to about motor union command staff, and then you cut
Yeah,
out.
we were talking about the communities that we serve and how policing impacts them, the NHPI, the Latino communities, the Black communities, the refugees, the LGBTQ communities that we serve. And then scroll down a little bit. The organizations that we have that we're able to leverage training with, the FBI, Post, a lot of our command courses that we teach. And then the impact that the rep has had in policing, and then legislative movement, and then opportunity not only to embrace this type of training, but to lead from the front. There's over 18,000 organizations within police departments across this country. There's 900,000 police officers, but we don't want to just be one of the pack. We want to lead, and so Salt Lake City will always push for that. So that's kind of the curriculum that we're looking at. We're going to let these organizations pick one or two of the topics that they would like to present on. We'll give them 30 minutes to present, so it's kind of like a test run to see how they do and kind of listen to them. And then we would like to have a committee made up of the chief, 2 rep commissioners, 2 people from HR, 2 individuals from the mayor's office, and then 2 of our officers that are assigned to C-rep and to participate, and then pick those that we think do the best job and could best represent this type of training here within our department. Any thoughts or questions on that, commissioners?
I think this is great, Chief. That looks wonderful.
And if you take a moment and look through the curriculum and read through that packet, and if you have any ideas, you can get back with Moana and we can talk about them further.
And as far as service on the committee, we'd like to have, I'm sure, one of the persons from training that would be a part of that committee. There are 4 of us that are on that committee, and we'll select one or get one to volunteer.
Yeah, that would be just fine, Commissioner Davis.
All right.
Great idea. So we're excited about this. I think this is going to be really good. And then we'll, the trick is going to be, to pick an organization that can do this, but then do it, the number of times we do it, and then represent the communities that we serve, because we want that grassroots component to this training as well.
I think
Chief,
that sounds
during
good. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I apologize, Chief. During the transition between computers, we skipped over those major incidents. Is the point of that to show the officers like the turning points in law enforcement and the importance of connecting with community, or can you give some insight on that?
Yeah, Steve, I think that's exactly. I mean, you did what, 30 years in law enforcement? You know, you've been through a lot of those different things and how they have impacted law enforcement and the lessons learned, and how we, you know, sometimes we fail to make those connections to the communities we serve, and really just to, you know, to study the history and then hopefully never repeat that again. That's a great, you know, it's a great lesson learned.
Yeah, I agree. We skipped that. I wanted to make sure that was included in the discussion, and I agree.
And we can add to that. That's just 3 of
Yeah.
many that we can talk about.
Yeah.
There's
And we're
many.
open, and that's just it. It's open to suggestions. I mean, you could go back to the civil rights movement, you know, and how officers, departments used to respond to riots and what they use, and how now what we use when we're dealing with, you know, civil disorder, and how we've grown and learned from those past events to now. So, I mean, it's so large, Commissioner Underwood. These are just kind of ideas to throw at the consultants to see what they pull from, to help us educate not only our officers, but our professional staff.
And I think we have a living legend, Commissioner Davis, that probably has a ton of experience that he can share historically to this, if you ever wanted to be involved in some of that teaching, Commissioner.
Well, I'd certainly be interested in sharing my experiences doing the civil rights years and marching with Dr. King and Malcolm X and so forth. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we'd love to have that. So that's kind of what we're thinking. Again, please take some time, look through it, put your pen to it, read it, ink it up, and any suggestions you have, we'll build out a great program, and we'll keep refining it, and we'll do it year after year after year.
great.
Okay. The second part, if you want to go, Moana, jump back to that other PowerPoint we had. I'll quickly go over a couple more things, and then we will turn it over to somebody else.
Are you all seeing this? I'm sharing it. Is it showing up, or should I reshare? Okay,
Next page.
Uh,
Next page.
okay,
Next one.
there we go.
Okay, this is the CLIA update. This is the accreditation component. This is what we've talked about. This is what the rep, I think, is recommended that we do. I wanted you to know that our first initial accreditation occurred in March of 2020. We successfully reaccredited on April of 2021. And these are a big process. This is a 4-year program where we have to do 3 remote digital assessments. And over it, I mean, it's more than just saying you've done it. You have to prove it to these. There's somebody assigned to our department. A chief from Rhode Island is actually assigned now. He's our accreditation manager, and we'll have to prove. We have to show 4 years of proofs to 162 standards by the end of the year. So I wanted you to know we're on track to do that. We're doing well with our proofs. And we'll continue to update you on where we're going. And I know the Rep Commission asked to see if maybe we would want to step up the game and go to the next level of accreditation. So we'll look at that as well too. Any questions on CALIA? Next slide. And then I just really wanted to thank you, commissioners. I know that we came to you with our request to see if you would support that second sergeant for our special victims unit. That's a big position here at the police department, and we really needed it. And then the violent crime apprehension team, thank you for your support on that, as well as the community outreach officer. So I know that the commissioners, Commissioner Nicole Salazar Hall and Tanya Hawkins, reviewed that, and we got a letter back from them. So thank you very, very much on that. Any questions on that?
Good deal. No questions.
All right, then we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Next we have, oh my goodness, I lost where we are. The new educator senior advisor for the Salt Lake City Mayor's office. Jennifer Newell will introduce herself to the commission and her scope of work that pertains to the commission. So Jennifer, you're up.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here. I'm so excited about this new position. I come from a 24+ year career in the Salt Lake City School District, where I worked in the equity department and student services department, as well as a number of years in the classroom. And so I'm really excited to be here. I know that a big part of my job will be working with, serving as the liaison between the Salt Lake City Police Department and the Salt Lake City School District and the SROs, the MOU, but I'll also be involved. We had a meeting today where it was clear that there's a lot of things that fall under education. And so I'll be involved in a lot of other things that are related to education. So I'm excited to see what those end up being, and excited to meet a lot of you. I already know some of you, which is awesome. So looking forward to working with all of you.
And just to add, we're excited to have you too, Jennifer, and she'll be joining some of our subcommittee meetings upon request, but also, or specifically with the school safety as we work through the MOU. So thanks, Jennifer.
As I mentioned earlier, also, I think it would be helpful if Jennifer could work with the training committee, because a part of education is not just the training of the community and the students, but also training of officers. And so I don't know, Chief, if you have any ideas about that or not, or whether that's something that you would have a problem with or not.
He may have disconnected.
Gone.
I think he's
Yeah.
trying to reconnect.
They were having technical.
So Lieutenant Zayas, maybe you can relay to him my interest in having her meet with the training committee from time to time. And we plan to meet Monday before this meeting at 5:30.
I will relay that, sir. And Moana, if you'll just update the training subcommittee so that we can make sure that we have our officers there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll get that to him.
Thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, and welcome aboard. This is awesome. Next, we have the school safety resource officers and the memorandum of understanding update. Sergeant Tierlink, is that right? Will provide updates on SRO teams and the status of the MOU. It's your turn, Sergeant.
Sarge, we can't hear you.
Oh, it's your turn. You go ahead, Sergeant.
I think he might have technical difficulties too. Oh, today is what a day.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
We'll just wait a second. Oh,
Can we message her?
we still can't hear Sergeant Tierlink. Can you hear us? Oh, just a second. They're still trying to figure out.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
good.
Now, yeah. There we go.
Okay, very good. So I have been working on the MOU, and I have at this point I've been going around and talking to my SROs, talking to my administration. I was trying to get a copy sent out to everybody, and I apologize with everything going on. I did not get that done. So the MOU, the primary thing that I am looking at doing is mostly there's just some tweaks we need to do. Some of the things that we're looking at are a little bit bigger. For example, right now, the MOU is designed for me to have an SRO in all of the high schools that is actually physically there all day. And I don't have the, with our police department, with the numbers we have, we just don't have the manpower to do that. And so I'm working towards the MOU being more of a response, so that we are responding more to the calls, more of a school response team than school resource while our numbers are low. But overall, there's things that I had wanted to change. Some of the things that we're tying our hands on things that we could do, that have now been passed into law, and so I can't make those changes. The things of the smoking and drinking on campus. I think I struggle with the idea that that's not an SRO problem. I've been working with the school district. The other problem that we have is school-to-school trespass at the beginning of our school year. We had a lot of school-to-school trespass, and that was causing the fights like crazy, and that is considered a school district problem and not a police issue. And so we're kind of working on things like that. I'm working with, at the present time, I've been talking to principals and getting their input on the MOU and the tweaks that we can make. And as I get this tweak down, I hope to be sending it all out to you all for your input. It would be really nice to have this thing as close to buttoned up, at least so that the attorneys could start doing their magic on it in the next few months.
Sergeant Tierley, may I make a quick comment about the trespassing piece? I'm just
Yes.
curious what I read in the MOU is the trespassing piece was if there is imminent danger or threat of harm that the police officer SROs can intervene. So I know you can't always predict, or we want to be careful about profiling, and they're here, they must want to fight. But it feels like there is some wiggle room in there in case that becomes necessary. Has it been totally separated where SROs feel like they can never get involved in the case?
No, my officers will get involved, and they will go talk to the students. They will, if there's a fight, they're going to wait in the middle of it. Sometimes it scares me because I've seen video of 20 kids in a brawl and one officer wading into the fight to break it up. So my officers will get involved and break up fights and things like that. It's just when we have a group of kids from one school coming over to another school, and let's say they don't get in a fight, we can't. Historically, we have given those kids a citation for trespassing. That is not really an option anymore. So we will have the same kids. At the beginning of the school year, we had some kids from West, and they came up, and it was a brutal fight. We returned them to West. They received in-school suspension. That was on a Wednesday. Friday, the same group of kids were up at East again, fighting again, and we weren't. It was like, the kids know, they're smart, they know that nothing's going to happen. And so we've kind of, in my personal opinion, at one point we were given too many tickets. We were putting too many kids in the juvenile justice system. At this point, we've kind of swung the other way, and the kids know, there's got to be a happy medium that we can find. And there's a lot of little tweaks that I would like to see. The school district does not, if we want a copy of a video of an incident, they want us to write a warrant to get that copy. So and we just don't have the time. And so my solution is that we're asking the school district to maintain those videos, unless it's a felony case. If it's a felony case, then we're going to write a search warrant. But if it's if it's a misdemeanor case, then we'll just ask the school district to maintain those videos, and if those cases go to court, then they can send their people to court with it. Just little things like that to free up our time, and you know, we want to work with them. These individual schools really work really well with my officers. The district administration, they are really seems to be happy with it, with what we're doing. They are wanting more of us, not less. So that's probably a good sign.
Sergeant, have you been able to talk to the new superintendent of Salt Lake City schools and get his input?
You know, we have had some conversations with him. As far as we haven't discussed, at least I have not discussed the MOU with him at this point. I think it's still among us, you know, those of us who are working on it. Then it will move up the chain to the higher level.
Oh, okay, okay.
Is this, when we're done with this, is this the time that I should be bringing up the PYP, or do we have them on the agenda for it at another?
Oh, this time would be good, Sergeant.
Okay.
You
Do
can
you have
also
any,
introduce them.
is there any other questions on our on the MOU before we move on?
I just wanted to say from since the chair isn't here, she also chairs the school safety committee and subcommittee. And if you need to work through specifics and get a quick turnaround, she said she would be available for that, as well as I know that Commissioner Solovi works within the school, and his perspective would also be through the subcommittee group. So when you're ready to send that through and you need our feedback, Sergeant Teerlink, everybody's ready to help you out on that.
Okay, great. Tell me again who the chair. What is?
Nicole Salazar.
Nicole. Okay, yes, I know who she is. And then who was the other person again?
Commissioner Solovi, or coach that's right here, who works at West High. I think
Perfect. That's great. Okay. Okay, now on the PYP, our
Hey,
promise.
Doug, can I just make one comment on that? Just so, in the absence of our chair, I know that she's done a lot of work on the school safety committee. And I was actually reviewing the phase 1 report earlier today, and it doesn't have all the recommendations for discussion in that MOU documented in that report, but it does reference that there is some material that committee would like to have discussed. So I just want to remind all the folks that are a part of that process that this committee did vote on some concepts that may be part of the discussion for that MOU. So there's some documentation out there that I think should be evaluated by all the folks who have a say in that. So just as a reminder.
Yes, and I plan to be to the next school safety committee, and hopefully I'll have the MOU farther down the road by then. So
good. Thanks, Doug.
So our PYP, Ashley is our PYP. She's in charge of our youth outreach. She's going to kind of give you a rundown. I'm going to make my quick plug for two things. Which first off, we right now have Ashley full-time plus 7 part-time advocates that we have in the schools. How many? 8. Okay, anyway, we are going to lose, we have 3 of those that their grant funding is going to be over in the next few months. And so we're trying to work, requesting from the mayor's office to make those full-time positions. And hopefully we can, that would be nice if we could make that. With her program is amazing, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you, Sergeant. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Ash Fletcher. My pronouns are she, hers. I am the program manager of the Promising Youth Project over at Salt Lake City Police Department, a crime, violence, and gang reduction program. Yes, right now we have 8 part-time advocates, and 3 of those were funded through the COPS grant we were rewarded 2 years ago. We are on the verge of losing 3 part-time employees because that COPS grant ends in July. With that said, we currently have a wait list of kids waiting to get into our program. That's our academic program. That's our year-long, school year-long program. And we anticipate an extensive wait list for our Promising Youth Summer Opportunity Program. We already have about 40 applicants. We're only accepting about 60, and we have 3 more months of accepting applicants. So what I'm trying to let you all know is we will not be a successful program if we do not have full-time, fully funded, permanently funded positions for the Promising Youth Project. Inconsistency can cause harm to the youth that we're working with and the families that we're working with. And we really try really hard to cause absolutely no harm and be very ethical in everything that we do. And my biggest concerns right now are the harm and the ethics that come along with losing 3 advocates and not being able to meet the demands. So, thank you, commissioners.
Is that funding provided by the mayor's office, or where does the funding come from?
Commissioner Davis, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Sure.
This program's been funded through grants, and that's what's happening. The grants are running out. They're only for X amount of years. So I think that we're coming up to the end of the grant, and so we are now going to take our recommendations to the mayor because we really feel this program is impactful to the youth of our city. And so we'll ask for that funding. And what I'll do is I'll come back and make a little more presentation to you folks, and then we'll ask for a letter of support. If we could get that letter from you, I think that would really help us as we push forward to continue to fund this.
Okay.
Thank you for
the present funding can't be continued, or is there no avenue for continuing to apply for that?
Unfortunately,
go ahead, Ashley.
I apologize, Chief. Unfortunately, with the COPS grant, it's a grant that is supposed to aid in a startup of a project or a program. Okay. And so really the grant was focused on getting us up and running and seeing what we could do.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add from the last school safety committee meeting that they were supportive of actually the PYP program. So I will, when you send those over, Chief, I'll be able to relay all of that information to the rest of the group.
And I think that was pretty thoroughly vetted in phase 1, and the commission recommended it. I think it's a strong program, Ashley, and just as a reminder, that did get onto the final agenda for this group at the close of the last phase. And I'm pleased that we're continuing to seek that funding because I think it's really important for our youth.
Thank you.
And I agree. I think that it's great that it got there, and we want to do everything we can to help make sure it continues.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I appreciate you both, everyone.
Vice Chair Hopkins?
Yes, sorry.
Can I just interrupt one more time? I apologize. At the beginning, we had reflection period for commissioners, but I'm not sure if we asked if there was any public comment. I think they got blended together and we moved on. So I don't know if we have anybody waiting. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry.
Vice Chair Hopkins. No, not at all. I just if we have public here, I want to make sure that they have their say. So I apologize for, I was trying to jump in between topics, but we're having such an efficient meeting, I wasn't able to do it. So anyway, at your discretion, Vice Chair.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. Do we have any public comment or anybody in the public forum? Luana?
I do see a couple, if they could raise their hand if anyone would like to make a comment. I'm not seeing any. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that up. And thank you, Ashley and Sergeant Tierlink. Sorry, that was my bad. Sorry about that. My next is the legislative update. Mark Cottrell will provide an overview of 2022 legislative session and its impact on policing and Salt Lake City. Mark, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Vice Chair Hawkins, and thanks for having me. It's good to see a lot of you again. It's been a while since I've appeared before the commission, but I'm glad to see a lot of familiar faces. I apologize, I don't have as tight of a presentation as I would like tonight to discuss some of the bills that passed this legislative session that affect policing. So what you'll see from me is kind of going through a list. I'll be looking off camera at sort of some wording here, and I may have to read some wording from the bill or from some notes from our lobbyists. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. The legislative session just completed, so I may not have answers necessarily to all of the questions you have, but could certainly endeavor to do some research and get back to the commission on any questions. So without further ado, let's roll forward. And if you guys need me to prepare something in written form after this that makes it easier to digest, that's some work we're happy to do as well. So the first bill, I'm going to go through numerical order, HB 23. It's a bill titled First Responders Mental Health Services. And in summary, what that bill requires is that all first responder agencies provide mental health resources for employees, spouses, children, and retirees. So essentially our police officers, our firefighters, our dispatchers, I believe it covers dispatchers, the city is required to provide them mental health resources. The next bill on my list is HB 94. And this is an interesting bill. The final bill looks a little bit different than what was originally proposed. HB 94, as originally proposed, let me pull this up, it governs the membership of Post Council, Police Officer Standards and Training Council. And as originally proposed, it would have added a non-supervisory law enforcement officer from either a particular police union or police association, like the Fraternal Order of Police, the Salt Lake Valley Law Enforcement Agency, or the Utah Highway Patrol Association. But that language was struck, and they're just going to put in a non-supervisory role. But what's probably of more interest to this group is that there was to be, in the original version of the bill, a representative of a nonprofit civil rights organization that represents minority populations. That particular language in the final version of the bill was struck. And so the bill only, as I'm looking at it here in the final form, would add just the certified law enforcement officer in a non-supervisory role. So that was HB 94. The next bill of interest is HB 123, and this is called Use of Force Revisions. And what it really does, though, is in the final form, is originally, I guess it sought to have an officer identify him or herself as a peace officer and give a clear oral warning of intent to use a firearm or other physical force. That language was struck, but the language that remains that was in the original, that is of interest to this body, is that when it comes time for an OICI investigation, as some of you know, when an OICI investigation is undertaken, you have, by Utah statute, the district attorney or county attorney of the county where that occurs, working in concert with outside law enforcement agencies. This bill says that that county or district attorney has to get a finding completed within 180 days of the incident. And if they don't have a finding within 180 days, they need to essentially post a public statement stating a reasonable estimate when it will be complete and the reason for the delay. So essentially, it's an attempt to force county and district attorneys to get their OICI investigations done in a more timely fashion than they have been. The next bill on my list is HB 124. And this is titled Forcible Entry Warrant Modifications. And it's a pretty big bill. I'll just kind of go through the summary. What it gets to is sort of the concept of knock and announce or no knock warrants. And the state law requires officers serving knock and announce or no knock warrants to wear readily identifiable markings or clothing that identify them as law enforcement officers. It requires that officers knock and announce themselves more than once before forcibly entering a building. And it sets a preference for warrants to be served during daytime hours. It does, however, allow for exigent circumstances when serving knock and announce warrants. And finally, it prohibits the use of no knock warrants for misdemeanor charges. So a pretty expansive bill. It's a bill that's been discussed in prior legislative sessions over a number of years. And this is the version that was finally passed. Next bill on my list is HB 171, titled Custodial Interrogation Amendments. And this bill, bring it up here, addresses custodial interrogation of a juvenile and what is not allowed by law enforcement officers. And I'll just read directly from the language of the bill. If a child is subject to a custodial interrogation for an offense, a peace officer or an individual interrogating a child on behalf of a peace officer or law enforcement agency may not knowingly, A, provide false information about evidence that is reasonably likely to elicit an incriminating response from the child, or B, make an unauthorized statement about leniency for the offense. It was colloquially referred to as the deception interrogation bill. There is some concern from law enforcement that this could hamper or hinder attempts to solve pretty serious offenses. And so we'll see where things shake out. The next bill is HB 260, House Bill 260. And this is called the Law Enforcement Recording Release Amendments. And on this particular bill, it doesn't, it affects all law enforcement in Utah, but what it does, in my estimation, is sort of bring other law enforcement agencies more in line with where Salt Lake City is. As some of you know, there is an ordinance that requires that body cam footage from an officer-involved critical incident by local law has to be released within 10 business days of the incident, absent any extenuating circumstances. And that will remain, right? This bill does not curb Salt Lake City's ability to do that. And to my knowledge, Salt Lake City is the only agency in the state that has a law that requires something that quickly, or even a policy or procedure that quickly. What this state law does is in the event of a GRAMA request for an OIC for body cam footage related to a critical incident, that a requesting party shall get within 10 days after one of the following occurs. After the prosecuting agency, the county attorney or the DA, declines to file on the case, issues the report and declines to file, or after the prosecuting agency files a criminal action related to the incident, and if in that particular position, the judge adjudicating that criminal action is notified about that request, and the judge determines that release would not have a substantial likelihood of prejudicing a finder of fact in the criminal action. It wouldn't affect the jury. So it's not anywhere near closer to what Salt Lake City is, but it does at least put some guardrails on never releasing, right? In a hypothetical situation, it could happen fairly quickly, and that under the state law, or it may take a while if those criminal charges are dragged out and a judge determines he doesn't want to release it. So that is HB 260. The next one is one you may have heard about. It's HB 399. And this is what some people call the Garrity bill. What this bill does is it classifies as a protected record under GRAMA those statements by officers that are compelled under by their employer, yet protected under Garrity. Garrity is a Supreme Court law that says government employers can compel statements of their employees. So not just law enforcement officers, firefighters, teachers, nurses, lawyers, and they can compel those statements that may involve potential criminal culpability, not in violation of their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, because those statements should never be turned over to a prosecutor. So what this bill does is there was a gap in the law, and it said that it never really classified these records. It classifies them as protected. Now, does it mean that they'll never be ever made public? No. Certainly under GRAMA, there's something called the balancing test. And under GRAMA, what a governmental entity is supposed to do is determine whether the public interest merits providing something that might be protected under law. In some instances, they could protect, they could reveal it. Others, they may withhold it. And same with the State Records Committee or a judge. If things get appealed up that high, they do that balancing test. And certainly if the threat of criminal prosecution subsides in a case, then I don't think the Garrity protections no longer exist, right? Because the Fifth Amendment, there is no risk of self-incrimination. The Fifth Amendment privilege doesn't really apply anymore. So I think a lot has been made out of the bill, but really, as you look at it from a legal perspective, I do think that there are a lot of caveats to how those protections apply. The next bill on my list is SB 126. This bill is called the Officer Intervention and Reporting Amendments. And this is sort of a larger bill. It's been referred to as the Duty to Intervene bill. And I think that's a fair assessment of what this means. This is a bill under state law that requires officers, if they are in a position to do so without, trying to find the language here, position to do so safely and without unreasonable risk to the safety of the officer or another individual, they have to intervene to prevent certain types of misconduct from occurring. And the misconduct that is defined under this particular bill includes the following: force that is clearly excessive in type or duration beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances, a search or seizure without a warrant where it is clear under the circumstances that the search or seizure would not fit in to one of the exceptions to the Fourth Amendment warrant requirement, or conduct that an objectively reasonable person would consider biased or discriminatory against one or more individuals based on race, color, sex, pregnancy, age, religion, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So those are the three big categories where officers have a duty to intervene. Now, I would say this, a lot of this is repetitive of what case law requires. Case law does require a duty to intervene on those first two that we talked about: excessive force or a search or seizure in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Case law or federal law does not require a duty to intervene on that third category. That's now an obligation under state law. And so if they can't reasonably intervene, then they have to then report that up their chain of command to those who are in a position to do something about it. The law also prohibits, of course, retaliation against those who may report that behavior, right? They want to ensure that there is not a disincentive to reporting. So that's SB 126. Last bill that is sort of perhaps a curious note here is that there was an amendment to the medical cannabis bill. You may have heard that there was a lot of concern about certain governmental employees, public safety employees, fire, paramedics, law enforcement officers who were not able or who were prohibited from using medical cannabis in accordance with state law. And what this bill does is it sort of carves out law enforcement officers from being able to use that under state law. And the reason for that is that Post holds that law enforcement officers would be violating federal law if they are lawfully using under state law medical cannabis, right? It's still illegal under federal law. And because of that, they would probably yank their certification as peace officers in Utah. So it's a wrinkle in the medical cannabis bill. There are two bills that I would like to bring your attention to that did not pass, that our lobbyists think are worth sort of keeping an eye on. The first is called HB 73. And this is a bill that was run by Representative Stoddard and Senator Escamilla. And it failed, but it may come back next year or maybe set an interim. And what this does is it adds to those things where post can suspend an officer's certification, the following type of behavior. If post is notified by the peace officer's employer that the peace officer's employer found the peace officer to have knowingly engaged in conduct in violation of the minimum use of force standards. So essentially, if a law enforcement agency learns that their officer is using excessive force and reports it to post, that could form the basis of a suspension or revocation of certification. So that failed, but it could come back next year. The next bill that our lobbyists think is important for this group to know is, which failed this past legislative session, SB 228. This was run by Senator Anderegg. And let me just find the summary on this because it's fairly large. So Anderegg's goal is to provide first responders with information on individuals with certain mental health conditions prior to them arriving on scene. So is the person dealing with schizophrenia? Are they autistic, et cetera? And the goal is a better response for everyone involved. And so lobbyists, stakeholders have been brainstorming from the 911 dispatch side how this could work and are trying to create a rough outline. The data entered into the system, according to the bill, would be voluntary, right? It wouldn't be compelled by anybody, but if somebody perhaps had a son who may have behavioral problems due to mental health issues and wanted to notify a local law enforcement agency or dispatch center that, hey, if you respond to my address about my son, please be aware of this particular condition. That would be pushed out according to this bill. They're still trying to figure out how that could be done. There's a lot of concerns about, this sensitive data, who would have access to it, how would it be protected? So I think in concept, you see a lot of people seeing some potential benefit here, but because there's a lot of other issues to be worked out, they're going to be working on the bill to see if they can come up with something that everyone can sort of get on board with. It may not happen, but that's something they're keeping an eye on. So those are the major bills that we've identified so far. I don't know if this group has any questions.
It seems like on that last bill you just said that didn't pass, they're going to have to wait until the app comes out, where the app is applied, where they have that access to that information before they arrive on the scene. I think that information, have the information, what ethnicity the person is also. I think that would be helpful. But I see that becoming an app.
That's an interesting idea, yeah. And certainly, I don't know if, and I have not studied the bill in depth, I don't know if there's restrictions on the type of demographic information they may take, but you're right, there may be more volunteered that may be of interest to a responding agency.
Can you go back to the one bill that you were discussing? It had something to do with the no-knock warrant.
Yes.
So you said, I can't package it how you or unpack it how you said it. What would it had to consist of a felony for there to be what?
So if you want to use a no-knock warrant, the suspected crime has to be a felony. It cannot be a misdemeanor. It doesn't mean that you automatically get them, but if you are to use a no-knock warrant, you got to comply with all those other requirements, and the suspected offense has to be felony level.
Wouldn't they be able to obtain a no-knock warrant if the assailant was a felony offender prior?
I mean, from a legal perspective, if I'm looking at that, just because you have a felon in a house, and I'd have to make sure the bill, my thinking here is in line with the bill. If that is someone who is a convicted felon, but is, in their own home or whatever, and they're accused of a misdemeanor offense, right? Essentially, there's an accusation that they have, got a Class A misdemeanor possession charge or something else. my read of the bill is you cannot get a no-knock for anything where even a prior felon is only accused of a misdemeanor.
That's just what that was just the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
An additional question I'd like to ask regarding item number 1, that you talked about the requirement for mental health services and all of that. Was there any dollars attached to that bill?
I'm looking at the fiscal note here. I'm not seeing any funds allocated in the bill. The fiscal note on the bill is contemplating $5 million. It could cost the Division of Public Safety $5 million one-time in first responder mental health grant program. Let me see if that means those funds would be offered to individuals. Gosh, why am I not getting this? Okay. Yeah, so essentially what's happening here on the funding, Commissioner Davis, is that there are $5 million is to be available through DPS, Department of Public Safety, and agencies are to apply for grants to help facilitate that from that $5 million pot of money.
So the chief could apply for some of those dollars to do that kind of work.
It would certainly seem so. I don't know if we would get it, because as I look at the bill a little bit further, they're prioritizing grant funding for those counties and cities that are much smaller than Salt Lake City. They call them counties and cities of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th class in town. So I imagine if there's any pot of money left over after paying out to those entities, we might be able to get some, but I wouldn't be terribly optimistic.
Mark, does it specify new programs or ongoing programs?
Good question. Let me look at the text. I'm not seeing anything about new programs. It certainly is talking about proposals, requests for qualifications, but then it says program description. And so I would imagine if there was a program description that we have that could fit the criteria, we may be eligible to apply. Now, again, how much we'd get and where we would be in the priority, I think remains to be seen. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry, Chief. You are correct. I just went down to line 125. We can't apply for a grant to fund a program already in place. However, a request for a proposal to fund an expansion of an already existing program, so long as we meet certain criteria, I think can be applied. But then, of course, we'd be lower in priority.
I like the requirement, but I think it's an unfair burden to put on the departments without giving them additional funding. So that's just my reaction to that.
You don't hear a disagreement from me, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you for all of those reviews. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for not being as well-versed or as tightly scripted as I would have liked.
Thank you for that, Mark. Oh, go ahead.
Mark, we missed you. We hadn't seen you in a long time. You used to be with us all the time, coming up with new stuff.
I miss all of you too. It's always fun to appear before you. Certainly, my office duties have taken me in a bit of another direction. So, but I'm always happy to appear before all of you. And if you guys have any questions that I can be helpful on, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Well, it's good to see you, and I like that beard.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Hold them accountable. I like that, Steve. Mark, your summaries are fantastic as always, but I did miss that detail on the medical marijuana. Is it law enforcement is still not able to utilize it with a prescription? So that's one of the exceptions.
That's the takeaway due to post certification issues.
Wanted to make sure I heard it clearly. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Well, okay. Thank you, Mark. And I do miss you. I agree, Steve. I mean, Commissioner Johnson, sorry. So is there anything else? I would like, can I get a summary of those?
Yeah, why don't we do?
Sent to me?
Yes, Vice Chair Hawkins, that's a great idea. Why don't I try to put something together that has links to the language of the bills so that I don't inadvertently mislead you about what they do, but also try to provide some summaries that highlight what the bills are supposed to be doing.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Okay, you too. Okay, next we have the subcommittee chair updates.
I can, Vice Chair Hawkins, I can also just give them quickly because I was the note taker from the meetings.
That would be wonderful.
From the policy and practice meeting that we had, some of the priorities they wanted to focus on this year was reviewing policy and practice through the lens of refugees and new Americans. So throughout this next 2022 year, they just want to review policies from that perspective. And another piece to that was they wanted to look at crime reduction and how it's reached, as well as how, particularly around gun violence and recent incidents within not just Salt Lake City, but in the metropolitan area. For the training, we will be changing the meeting time so that we could have all of the folks meet there. But something that we talked about in that meeting was just to make sure that there were people to staff when you bring together the final group presentations, Chief, they just wanted to make sure that they were part of that, as Commissioner Davis talked about earlier in the meeting. And then finally, with the school safety subcommittee, they want to ensure that the MOU is completed and that PYP gets funding. Those were the two priorities that they wanted to just make sure to close the loop from phase 1. And that's all we have, Vice Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Juana. And I believe review the next meeting agenda.
And that's me as well. For our next meeting, we will have, I already have confirmed, is a presentation from Dispatch Director Myers. So that information that some of the stuff that Commissioner Johnson is talking about in terms of an app, I think those questions would probably be better directed towards the dispatch director and maybe bringing up ideas such as those. And then we will also be following up on one of the things from our December meeting Chief brought up as well, or some of the commissioners asked the chief to just follow up on social worker pay and possible internship partnership with the U of U social work program. And then those are the two main things that we'd be covering in the next meeting.
Great, thank you very much. And I don't believe we are going to do a closed session. Is that correct? So,
Chair, before we get there, did we ever reach some kind of conclusion regarding the Ranger program? Do we have a good sense of what that's going to be and where it's going to be and how? The Ranger program?
I have not seen anything. Moana, do you know anything about that?
So when they answered Commissioner Davis, when the council was here last meeting, I have it in our notes from in the minutes from last month, and they are still waiting they were approved funding. Let me just pull it up real quickly and I can read it. I don't want to make sure it's, let me just read what they said in the last minute. So the park ranger still in budget amendment 6. The council funded the creation of the park ranger pilot program with 19 full-time employees in the public lands department with nearly 1.65 million. And that includes the 2 sergeants, 16 rangers, and 1 support position. And they will be, the purpose of them is serving as law enforcement in the parks, not post-certified like police officers, but providing services and information to park users and assisting with the homeless outreach efforts. If you need any specific questions though, Commissioner Davis, of the current, where it currently is, I can send those to the director, Kirsten, who came in 2 meetings ago, if you have any specific questions, Commissioner Davis.
I'm interested in the safety of those park rangers and how we're going to ensure that they are safe, given that they will not be certified and thus I suspect not able to have a weapon on them. So what are we going to do about their safety?
I will send that through to Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Davis. Is there anything else that needs to be brought up before we close this meeting? Okay, I believe we're done. with
Thank
this
you all.
Meeting, so thank you, everybody.
After the recording, Chair, could I ask the members of the training committee to stay online just for a minute?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.